The Hot Seat with Stan Govaya. You've got questions on burning current affairs, and we've got the people with the answers. You can participate by Facebook, WhatsApp, and live calls. Live on 94.1 Boom.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hot Seat with host Stan Govaya begins now. Now.
So, of course, a very good afternoon and welcome to the Hot Seat for today, the 25th day of April 2017. And, of course, I'm yours truly, Stan Govaya. Let me go without further ado into introducing our guest today. But just before I do that, let me just, give a little scene setter. In particular, I know some of these people are listening, and just to let you know that we would have initially tried to have the permanent secretary of the Department of Culture, Youth and Sport on the hot seat for today, but unfortunately we got no response despite our attempts at getting that. But we were able to do better than that in the sense of being able to have the minister responsible for those departments, who is going to be on the hot seat today and hopefully be able to answer all our questions within the stipulated time that we have. So without further ado, let me just say a very good afternoon and welcome to the Honorable Nicolette Henry, the Junior Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport. Welcome to the hot seat.
Well, thank you, Mr. Govaya, and I trust that I'm able to answer all your questions, and it's certainly a pleasure and a privilege to be here this afternoon on your program.
All right, so let me just first off, just to put it out there and to, clear, it's been, as a matter of fact, since before Christmas we were trying to get you on the hot seat.
It's been that long.
It's been that long, yeah. We just concluded Easter. So we're thankful that you found some time to be with us. But if it is that we were to, let's say, recap from that time to now, because during that time when we wanted to have you on, it would have been the whole budget presentation for 2017 that was being discussed and tabled in Parliament. And then we went into the whole matrimony and a couple of things that were happening then, but particularly as it relates to what has been allocated in the budget for 2017. And today we want to deal with three of the departments, which would be culture, youth, and sport. Not necessarily in that order, but as a matter of fact, yes, in that order. But when you look at what the subventions were that were assented to by Parliament for those departments, where do you think it puts your ministry by the end of year 2017?
Well, thank you for your question, Stan. And I have to say that I think that the Minister of Finance was very gracious to us in the Department of Culture, Youth and Sport. And we were able to get reasonable allocations. In the area of sports, we were able to get $210 million, which is very much unprecedented and which provides us with a platform to get a lot of things done. In the area of culture, we had in excess of $379 million, and in the area of youth, 159. These areas are very cross-cutting in many regards, and so there are times when culture overlap with youth, and it does overlap with sports also.
All right. So if you're to, I know you said some of them were unprecedented, and so by the end of this year, what are some of the plans and programs? And if we could to start, let's deal with culture. What can we expect to be happening in this department?
Well, perhaps outside of the activities and events, which is a requirement and which are routine things to be done, the matrimonies, Independence Anniversary, participation in Carry Festa every 2 years, and this is a Carry Festa year, and those are the routine things. Perhaps our flagship program, I would have to say, would be the Institute of Creative Arts, which we are expected to initiate phase 1 in 2017. And that is expected to be a premier and flagship program in that it will for the first time house all of our schools in the same building. And not only physically I'm speaking about. I'm also talking about upgrading a lot of the training programs that we provide. We have the Borough School of Art, which doing visual arts. We have dance school, music school, and those schools, theater and drama. It's to bring them all together under one umbrella. And, similar to programs that are run in other parts of the Caribbean, like the Edla Manley School in Jamaica. And so that we have an approved curriculum that puts our graduates at the same level as those coming out from other parts of the Caribbean. For much too long, I personally believe, and it is the view of quite a few persons that I have spoken to, that culture and the creative industry in particular seem to have been an area that could have had much more attention and prioritization. And so it is the government's intention, and we have been working assiduously, and we have made progress, which I will refer to in my couple minutes here on your program, to ensure that these programs are strengthened in areas where they don't exist at all. We need to ensure that we implement modern, creative, forward-thinking programs. That, of course, cannot be done in isolation without human development and capacity building. And so a couple of things that happened in the area of culture as it relates to that, I would have to say, would have been training opportunities. Recently, we've done training in lights and sound, which I thought did get some publicity, and it was one of those good things, because the service and the product that you can provide is only as good as the people that make it happen. And so earlier this year, we did get assistance from the OAS to provide training support to all of the persons in the Department of Culture. This is unprecedented. So we've trained everybody from cleaner right up to director, because it is important that if you work in a sector that you have a baseline understanding. And so capacity building is really key to achieving long-term or any sustainable, substantial goal.
So when you talk about long-term, I'm getting the gist that, yes, this is where the government wants to go, but in the absence of a cultural policy and the necessary legal framework, particularly as it relates to culture, intellectual property rights, and all of these things, how can we be able to realize this as a long-term?
Well, as you probably know already, I suspect you should know, that the ministry has also began consultation and putting a lot of work as it relates to the development of a cultural policy. As I suppose you would know Mr. Ruel Johnson.
Yeah, we would have had him on the hot seat earlier in the year.
Right.
And he would have promised that it was going to be completed by the first quarter of this year. And what we did learn is that it is now for consideration to Cabinet before going to Parliament.
Well, yes, and there are steps that have to be taken, and everything requires procedures and to make it happen. And so, yes, it was sent to Cabinet during the course of this month, and there are with Cabinet feedback, there need to be further consultations, and then it goes to the House. So it's a matter of due process.
Right.
And having said that, I certainly would like to thank and commend Ruel for taking the lead in pulling all of this together. It required a lot of work and certainly a lot of effort on his part and on the part of all stakeholders, and I really would like to thank him, and I look forward to seeing a final product that we all can own, that is complete enough to ensure that the work that we do in the Department of Culture, and even outside of the Department of Culture, but culture as a whole, as a people, is really sustainable and it's well grounded. And it can compare to what happened in similar settings, particularly in the region where we compare ourselves with more than any other place. In addition to the Institute of Creative Arts and the policy and the training opportunities, we're also about providing people with with facilities and instruments and equipment to ensure that things can happen for people. For instance, you would have seen over particularly during the past 2 years, we have taken the decision to procure instruments we didn't have before, equipment we didn't have before, and also to distribute those out, particularly to school. An action that was taken from the onset, having to do with the merging of education with culture, youth, and sports, is also intended to strengthen both education, culture, and culture in this case, as I'm referring to culture, because it's in keeping with ensuring that the end product, which is the child that we're working with or the young person, reaches their full potential, and it's rounded and it's not lopsided, concentrating on in culture, concentrating on in sport, but also concentrating on education, because the two work well when they go hand in hand, and it results ultimately in a more rounded person who's better prepared to contribute to their country and to the world, and also to contribute to self.
In the hot seat today is none other than the Junior Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Nicolette Henry. And we turn to now youth. And I know this is one of the ticklish areas, because on some sides, how do you respond or deal with the issue that says, well, this government doesn't seem to have time with the youths. Just take a look at what was allocated in the national budget for youths. Though we are aware that national youth policy was, assented to based on consultations, that is now seeking to have, particularly training, as you would have highlighted, as one of the important things. But how do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that while there is a department that deals with youth exclusively, it will be important that you put into context that youth is a very cross-cutting area. And while the Department of Youth would have gotten a budget for youth, guess what? The Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, they got a budget for youth also. The Ministry of Social Protection, they got a budget for youth. The Ministry of Public Health, there's an adolescent unit, and so it's cross-cutting. It is not in an isolated ministry or department, and so you have to add all of that to get the whole. And it needs to be cross-cutting, because youth in itself is a diverse population, and you have to begin to meet people where they are. And in order to tap into people where they are, because the interventions that you will want to do cannot be a one-size-fits-all. It is important that we understand that in the hinterland communities, that there are initiatives that are tailored for the specific needs of that community. And for the coastland, there are also, a different type of programs that are required, and then nationally they would be. So it's a very cross-cutting issue, and sometimes I find that we have a conversation about selected parts of an issue, and in order to have a real conversation, you need to look at it as a whole and to not look at parts in isolation. So we cannot take the Department of Youth and look at that in isolation as a government youth plan. It's more than that. It is a national effort. It's a holistic effort. I'm just a team member.
All right.
It doesn't start nor end with me. And from day one, I said, what I do, I provide service. Everything that I do is much bigger than me. I'm mere servant in all of this.
Do you feel that the message is getting out there, particularly as it relates to, as we do know right now, you would have already had a youth policy that was established. Is the message getting out there effectively to not just youths, but all those involved, to have all hands on deck?
And you asked an important question, and a question I believe is very relevant. The message is getting out, but there's a lot of competition. There are mixed messages, different messages. People say there's fake news, but I say there are fake people too. And so sometimes the messenger that you're paying attention to might not be the right messenger, because it depends on what is the message and what is the the particular agenda and ulterior motive that one may want to get out. And so there's a lot that is happening for young people, not only in my ministry, but I would want to focus on what is happening. And in order to reach young people, you have to get to them where they are. And so there are several platforms that are being used to engage young people outside of mainstream media. And even your program could be considered a forum really to speak about the work of the ministry and to concentrate on what we're doing. And outside of routine work, which is what we do with the various associations, youth groups, and organizations that are registered with the ministry, and that's routine. There are specific initiatives that target youth and their work. One of the biggest initiatives for our young people, and I would say it would be our flagship youth program for the Department of Youth this year, would be the Youth Innovation Program, in which we receive funding in the budget, and which I spoke to in my budget presentation, in my 2017 budget presentation. This program will be launched in the month of May. We have taken a decision as government to reinstitute Youth Week, which used to be observed in the past. So National Youth Week will be observed from the 21st to the 27th of May, which coincides with our independence celebration here in Guyana. And so there are a number of activities that are planned to observe Youth Week, and organizations were written to the Iraqs to come on stream to engage and to be part of the not only the planning but the execution and implementation. And some of these are long-term, beyond the Youth Week activity itself. The Youth Innovation Program, to which I speak, will see government providing support to young Guyanese who would have been selected based on submission of an expression of interest, because there will be a public call, first of all, to submit a proposal, which will require you to, first of all, identify a problem in the society, and a problem that is not peculiar to you, but a problem that is cross-cutting, that is affecting society, and come up with a proposed solution to that problem. And if your proposal is deemed to be fundable, and this will be selected through a panel, of course, of persons from different entities, so that you can be as broad as possible, because people have different ideas. And we want to focus on STEAMs, which is the science, the technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, and spirituality, which is a very important aspect of human development. And so you submit, and based on those that are selected, and I would like very broad and wide, submissions, so that those that we're able to choose from would be representative of people throughout the length and breadth of Guyana. And it is through concepts like that you really get to determine who in our local context would be our next Bill Gates, and that type of person, because it's really cutting edge ideas, and it should give an opportunity to our young people, particularly our best and brightest young people, to come up with ideas, creative ideas that can solve a problem. There'll be opportunities not only for funding, but to twin and to match them with organizations that work in the same line with the product or the project that they are proposing. And so we want to match. We would like to provide mentorship also in cases where we can. We recognize that the Department of Youth, that we may not have all the expertise in-house, and that's why multi-sectorial and interministerial partnerships are excellent opportunities for you to really be able to get as wide as possible the human resource that we have available here, and even outside of Guyana, if we need to be, to ensure that we can support young people ideas and they can take it from there.
All right. Excuse me. I think that's quite exhaustive in terms of exploring certain things that many people might not have been able to know before. Just before we turn to the other department, sport, and putting this out there that Minister would like to have you back to be able to sit down and discuss education, which should, and rightly so, be able to be given the kind of precedence. So you sit and discuss that alone at another convenient time to you.
For sure, and thanks for the invite, but if that is different, I think Minister Rupner Ryan might be in a better position.
It's difficult to get Minister Rupner Ryan. I think he's been running a competition with you in terms of since December. I wasn't able to have him, so I was hoping that...
In fact, you were able to get me. It seems like you're onto something good. So I look forward to that discussion, and hopefully the subject minister will be very...
We'll certainly follow up on that.
Yeah.
I want to go to sport, but just to put this out there, because as you know, on the hot seat, we try to answer questions that people have and so on. There is, how do you respond to, and I'm going to give you a very short time, just 30 seconds to respond to this. There is an assumption that, 30 seconds to respond to this. Yes.
Oh my God.
Before we go on to sport. It felt in some quarters that once you make up your mind, you stick with it. And you would have made up your mind, according to some, about the route for matrimony that we just saw pass. And they're hoping that this lady that makes up her mind and doesn't shift will have a reconsideration, or at least have a dialogue with those that matter for matrimony 2018 in terms of as early as possible to be able to guide that direction. What is your take on that?
Well, first, thanks for the question again. Actually, it's a perception. This lady doesn't make up her mind about anything like that. It doesn't work that way. You're not allowed to function that way as a minister. And let me say to you that I work with a team, and the people that really have to make the decision and determination is a broad cross-section of people. And they have to determine the feasible route, and I work with the guidance.
So maybe you need to shock out some of the team people.
It's bigger than that.
It's bigger than that.
And so you just don't wake up in the morning and shock out people and bring in people. And we're talking here serious business. And so people are representative of their sectors and their agencies, and they add value to your discussion, and hopefully they weigh in on the final decision that you will make. But as the minister with responsibility, guess what? The buck stopped there, and you're the person who ultimately have to own it. And you either stand or fall by your team, and that's life. I don't sit there in Main Street and determine what the next steps are. So I'm guided.
So will we be able to have some consultations with the key
it's broader than that, and it's much more than just having the consultations. People have to be allowed to function in their roles, and so security is an important sector in all of this. And I did receive from the security sector a communication indicating that these are possible alternative considerations for matrimony route.
Okay.
For 2018, I did get that feedback.
Okay.
And I'm guided by that. As I said before, you hardly, as a minister, at the Ministry of Education, being Nicolette Henry, get an opportunity to sit in your office and just make discussions and pull things out of the sky. It doesn't function that way.
So recently, as we deal with sports, recently what would have happened is that Guyana over last week was able to bring home gold medals at the Carifta Games, and 4, I believe it was. And what would have happened is that your Department of Sport, I think, in all of the hoopla and the excitement of what happened, and this is certainly a noteworthy achievement. Kudos to all of the athletes. Would have promised emphatically scholarships to the athletes who were at the Carifta Games. How did you come up with that, and what formula can other athletes be able to tap into such an announcement?
Well, first of all, Stan, and this will be an admission, I have to say to you that I, like all Guyanese who heard that announcement, heard it for the first time when it was made at the Pegasus. Notwithstanding my responsibility as the subject minister and with responsibility for that. The Ministry of Education has its role, and we certainly would like to support our young people, but we want to be serious about what we say and what we do. And I don't have any details about that. I heard it. I've since requested that I get some follow-up paperwork to see the details. I have not been privy to the details, and therefore I would not be in a position to expound on it. But until such time as I am made aware as to the details, I think the information will best be derived from the person that made the announcement.
I think, and that would be the director of
And
sport.
that would be the director of sports.
Who seems to be somewhat difficult to get in the media. I
not
remember the
so
last time we tried to get him, he did say that he had to get a permission from the subject minister, which is you. And
I don't think that would have been me, because he did not have to get permission from me. It could have been Minister Roop Jamari. If there was a minister, it would not have been Nicolette Henry, because there was, there's no need to get permission from me to speak about your work, and that is not the practice. That has never been the practice, and there's never been such any occurrence. So it could have been, it may be there was a minister, but not Nicolette Henry.
okay, we definitely will have to follow up with that. But as it relates to sports, so what we do know, for example, is that youth, they would have completed their policy. Culture, they have just completed theirs. And it's up for the draft, yes. And what is it with sport?
Sports also working assiduously on their draft. And as a department, they've been doing a great job in terms of working on the sports policy. We have since filled the position of Assistant Director of Sports, and that position description specifically requests that that portfolio should be the lead on that document, and that person has come on board and is taking the lead in May of next
So they're
month.
not two assistant directors of sport?
But I'm speaking about Miss Melissa Dow Richardson, who functions in the capacity as the Assistant Director of Sports. So I'm speaking about her. And to further add, that as of next month, I think from the permanent secretary's level, they'll be organizing consultations, which is a requirement of the ministry, as part of rolling out policies. And I'm expected and certainly will be a part of those consultations. So that will happen beginning May, but given the volume of activities slated for me, I anticipate that the majority of consultations would be done in June. But notifications and so will be sent. The first meeting will have to be, of course, with the associations and federations.
Okay. Minister, what oversight do you have with the National Sports Commission, and how much of an authority to themselves will that commission be?
Well, there's an act, and if you are to ever familiarize yourself with the act, it says very clearly there are a subvention agency. I do have a few subvention agencies that fall under my remit, and so it's the same type of relationship that I would have with the other subvention agencies. And if you notice in the act, there are 14 references to the minister, so they work under the guidance and in partnership with the subject minister from time to time. So that's the relationship. It's an entity that falls under the remit of the Department of Sports, and that's the relationship that we are required to have, and that's the relationship that we do have.
Does the commission give instructions to the minister's secretariat, or does the minister's secretariat instruct?
I'm surprised that you would ask a question like that. It seems to be a little odd, but I do have to say that the minister is a superior officer in this case. And in most cases, I believe, where you have a minister that is functioning as a ministry, it seems only natural that the minister would be the higher office. And that certainly is the case. And that is why it is in collaboration with the minister.
All right. Just before we go, I've got just one other question I'd like to put to you. Now, as we encapsulate everything that we just spoke about for the three departments on the your watch, sports, culture, and youth, where do you think some of your greatest shining and legacy will come from when you look back at your tenure as the minister?
Well, I have to say, first of all, I believe my biggest legacy would be the institutions that will be built during my tenure as minister. It will be the Institute of Creative Arts. It will be the tracks that we develop for our young people in Region 6 and Region 10. It will be the opportunities that we provide to our young people and give them the platform and the support and the opportunity to be all that they can be. You know, when I took up the office as minister with responsibility for culture, youth, and sport, I recognized the many gaps that existed in the system. And so there's some things that personally affected me. And I single out, and I can give several examples, but perhaps the one that I connected with the most was when the director of the music school came to me during my early days as minister. And he said, "Minister, we do not have a concert piano, and therefore we can only do so much in terms of training, in terms of exposure, in terms of entertainment. We just can't." And it struck a chord and it connected with me. And he said, "You know, we borrowed a piano from Suriname. And when you serve your country in uniform, and words like national pride, and so they mean something to you. For me, these are not empty words." I said, "We have to do better than that." Every boy and girl that wake up with a song in their heart must be given the opportunity that is equal to their contemporary in the region. We can't fail our people. And so Cabinet took a decision to procure a Steinway piano. It may not mean much to a lot of people who are not in that particular sector, but for the people that are inclined and that music is their bread and butter, it means a lot. And those are the opportunities that we do. You know, life is about social bubbles and dichotomies, and so people live in their own space and their own bubbles, and sometimes the narrative dictates a particular tone and a particular setting, and a lot of the good work that people do can get lost in a lot of sensationalism and fluff. But I say every day that there are many ordinary people in my office that do extraordinary things. They make things happen for people. They connect with the person who sculpts, the person that draws, the person that sings, the person that plays the instrument. And we do all that we can with the resources that are available to us to ensure that there is fairness and equity, and that people have the opportunity to be the best that they can be in the circumstance that we have.
All right. On that note, Minister Nicolette Henry, I'd like to say thank you for spending some time in the hot seat. You wouldn't believe the time is all run out. This means you're a pro at this. We can do this again. Can I get you to commit to being again on the hot seat?
Well, sure, Stan. I'm here to speak about the work of the people and the people that do the work. And they too can be invited. You know, it can't be about the minister alone. As I said in this program, and any person who would have interacted with me know that above everything else, I believe that we should put the people first. I believe that we should provide service that is second to none. And I believe that we should be committed and we should work as teams. And so, you know, I would have no problem with my officers coming, and if need be for me to come back on your program, I'll be happy to do so.
And of course, you people, you would have heard that commitment from the minister, had her officers or she herself, to return from time to time to answer the questions that you've got burning in your mind. Once again, a big thank you. This has been another edition of The Hot Seat. Stay tuned.